He has everything. Gold, cars, mansions, private jet, oil company, power. Name it all. But not even one person to say, "I love you." This is the story of the richest boy who just wanted to be loved. Nathan's house was bigger than any house he had ever seen in storybooks. The walls were high and white, decorated with golden vines. Marble floors stretched from the kitchen to the living room, smooth and cold beneath his tiny feet. There were 10 bedrooms, each with beds so soft they swallowed you like clouds. But despite all the riches, Nathan's heart felt small and hollow. At 5 years old, he would sit alone by the fountain, tossing pebbles into the water, pretending they were wishes. "I wish Mama would come outside," he would whisper. "I wish Papa would play catch with me." But the mansion stayed silent. Inside the house, Nathan would sometimes hear laughter. Not the sweet sound of a mother giggling with her child, but the cold, shallow laughter of guests at cocktail parties. His mother, beautiful and polished, floated around in long dresses, smiling at cameras. His father, a mountain of a man, was always on calls, shouting at men Nathan never saw. Deals, contracts, flights, money. Nathan became a ghost in his own home. Nannies tucked him in at night with plastic smiles. Bodyguards drove him to school but never asked about his day. On birthdays, Nathan would sit by the cake hoping. "Surely this time they'll come," he thought each year. But his parents never showed up. Only maids clapped and sang. And Nathan blew out his candles alone, wishing for something no money could buy: love and attention. One night, after eating his dinner alone, Nathan sat on the stairs swinging his little legs. He waited and waited, hoping his mother would come through the door. She didn't. Instead, it was Nanny Grace who came. Nathan looked up at her with big sad eyes and asked quietly,
"Auntie Grace, does my mommy and daddy love me?"
Nanny Grace knelt down beside him and brushed his hair gently with her fingers. "Of course they love you, Nathan," she said softly. "They're just very busy." Nathan looked down at his shoes.
"But if they love me, why am I always alone? Daddy does not play with me, and mommy also. Daddy's always on phone calls all day and mommy, she's always with her friends."
His voice shook a little, and he tried not to cry. Nanny Grace felt her heart break. She pulled him into a warm hug. "Oh, Nathan," she whispered, "you are very precious to them." But Nathan didn't smile. He just sat there, holding on to Nanny Grace like a small, lonely bird. One rainy evening when Nathan was 10 years old, he gathered up all his courage. He waited by the giant front door, clutching a crumpled drawing in his small hands. A picture he made of his family. A stick figure, Nathan, holding hands with his smiling parents under a bright sun. He heard the sound of heels clicking, his mother rushing past, phone pressed to her ear. "Mama! Mama, look!" Nathan called, holding up the drawing. She barely glanced. "Later, sweetheart." "I'm late for a work." And just like that, she vanished into the car, the driver speeding her away. His father followed a few minutes later, adjusting his cufflinks, barking into his phone. Nathan stood by the door long after the cars had disappeared into the rain. The drawing sagged in his hand, the colors smudging under teardrops. "Maybe if I draw a better one next time," he whispered to himself. He tucked the wet paper carefully under his pillow that night. Heartbroken but still hoping, the next morning after Nathan went to school, Nanny Grace decided she couldn't stay silent anymore. She walked into the shiny, beautiful sitting room, where Nathan's mother was picking out dresses with her friends. "Madam, may I speak with you?" Nanny Grace said politely. Nathan's mother didn't even look up. She waved her hand, busy laughing over a red gown. She took a deep breath and said, "Madam, with all respect, Nathan needs more than food and clothes. A child needs his parents' love more than anything else." Nathan's mother finally looked up, a frown on her face. "Love," she said sharply. "We give him the best life. Is that not enough?" Nanny Grace's eyes grew wet, but she kept speaking gently. "Madam, no money can hug a child at night. No gold can wipe his tears. No big house can make him feel safe when he's scared. Only a mother's or father's arms can do that." For a moment, there was silence in the room. The other women looked away, feeling awkward. Nathan's mother simply sighed and turned back to her dresses. "You're getting too emotional, Grace. Just do your job." "If it's about Nathan, don't worry. That's what I pay you for," she said lightly. "Just make sure he eats, studies, and sleeps. That's enough." Nanny Grace walked away slowly, wiping a tear from her cheek. One bright morning, Nathan sat in the living room, holding a small toy airplane. His parents had left earlier that day, flying to another city for a business meeting. Nathan had stood at the big front door, waving goodbye with a hopeful heart. But by nightfall, something strange happened. The house grew too quiet. Phone calls came. Whispers filled the hallways. Maids huddled together, crying. Nanny Grace came into Nathan's room, her face pale and shaking. She sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand gently. "Nathan," she said, voice trembling. "There was an accident. Your Mummy and Daddy's plane. It crashed." Nathan blinked at her. "When are they coming back?" he asked softly. Nanny Grace's eyes filled with tears. "They are not coming back, my darling," she whispered. Nathan stared at her for a long time, not understanding. Then he shook his head hard. No, you're lying. They're busy, that's all. They're always busy." He threw himself into her arms, crying and shaking. And Nanny Grace just held him, rocking him like a baby, until he cried himself to sleep. In the days that followed, Nathan noticed more and more strange men coming into the house. They wore suits and talked in low voices. One of them was his uncle, his father's younger brother, a man named Uncle Jude. Uncle Jude didn't smile much. He frowned at the paintings, tapped the marble floors with his shoe, and spoke about selling things and cutting costs. One afternoon, Nathan heard shouting downstairs. He crept to the stairs and peeked. Uncle Jude was standing in the hallway yelling at Nanny Grace. "We don't need so many useless nannies hanging around," Uncle Jude shouted. "The boy doesn't need a full house of staff draining money." Nanny Grace stood firm. "He needs love. He needs people he knows, people who care about him," she cried. "He needs discipline and savings, not waste." Uncle Jude snapped. "You're all fired. Pack your things and leave today." Nathan gasped. He ran down the stairs, grabbing Nanny Grace's skirt. "No, please don't go." Nathan sobbed. "You're my family. Please." Nanny Grace knelt down, crying too. She hugged Nathan tightly. "I don't want to leave you, my darling," she whispered, "but I have no choice." Uncle Jude pulled Nathan away, roughly. "Enough of this foolishness!" Nathan cried and cried until his throat hurt, watching Nanny Grace walk out the big front door, carrying her suitcase and wiping her tears. For the first time, the mansion truly felt like a graveyard. Uncle Jude moved into the house quickly. He wore Nathan's father's gold watches. He drove his expensive cars around the city. He sat in the biggest chair at the dining table, eating the best food like he was the new king of the castle. Nathan sat at the other end of the table, small and silent, pushing his food around his plate. At night, Nathan heard Uncle Jude's loud voice on the phone. "When can we sell this house? How much are the businesses worth? We need to move fast before the boy grows up and causes trouble." Nathan didn't understand all the words, but he understood one thing. Uncle Jude didn't care about him. He only cared about the money. Nathan missed Nanny Grace terribly. At night, he cried into his pillow, wishing someone, anyone, would hug him and tell him he was loved. But no one came. One rainy afternoon, a man in a gray suit came to the house. He was a lawyer. Nathan sat quietly on the couch while Uncle Jude paced back and forth, smiling. The lawyer opened a big brown envelope and pulled out some papers. He cleared his throat and began to read. According to Mr. and Mrs. Okoye's wishes, their entire estate, houses, businesses, bank accounts, are left to their only child, Nathan Okoye. Uncle Jude's smile disappeared. His face turned red. The lawyer continued. Until Nathan turns 20 years old, he will have a guardian to manage his affairs. Nathan looked up with hope. Maybe they chose Nanny Grace. But the lawyer said, Mr. Jude Okoye has been appointed as the guardian, but he will not inherit anything. Uncle Jude's mouth dropped open. The lawyer finished. Mr. Jude Okoye will receive a fixed allowance every month to care for Nathan and maintain the house. If he fails to care for Nathan properly, the court will remove him. The room went quiet. Nathan's heart pounded. For the first time, he saw anger in Uncle Jude's eyes. Not at Nathan, but at losing the treasure he thought he would steal. Uncle Jude was trapped. He couldn't sell the house. He couldn't touch the money. He had no power except to stay and pretend to be a good uncle. Nathan sat still on the couch, hands folded tightly in his lap. He was too small to understand everything, but he felt something heavy inside. Because even though he had everything, he still had no one to love him. The years passed slowly. Nathan grew from a small boy into a tall, quiet young man. By the time he turned 25 years old, the keys to everything were handed to him. The businesses, the houses, the cars, the millions. Uncle Jude packed his bags and left without even saying goodbye. Nathan stood at the mansion, watching his mean uncle, who had treated him badly like he does not exist all these years, leaving the mansion. Nathan's father did his best to train Jude in school and gave him enough money to start his own business. But he lavished the money on women, parties, and drinking. He always came back for more and was never satisfied. His brother's death gave him new hope of taking over all his brother properties. Thank God Nathan's father was educated enough to write his will once his son was born. The house was Nathan's now, but it still felt cold. It still felt empty. It still felt lonely. He had fought so hard for all this wealth, but what he had always wanted was love, and love was nowhere to be found. He tried to look for Nanny Grace but couldn't find her. Nathan Okoye was now 32 years old. If you looked at him from the outside, you would think he had everything. He drove shiny cars that sparkled under the sun. He lived in a mansion so big, you could get lost inside it. He wore clothes sewn by the most famous designers. He was the owner of giant businesses that people in the city respected and feared. But inside, Nathan felt like an empty room. He would come home after a long day, walk into his golden living room, and sit alone in silence. No mother waiting at the door, no father asking how his day went, no laughter, no hugs, only the soft ticking of expensive clocks and the quiet hum of loneliness. Sometimes Nathan would stare at the ceiling at night, whispering, God, is there someone out there for me? Someone who will love me? Not my money? But the nights always answered him with silence. One evening, Nathan attended a charity event. He stood by the side watching people laugh and dance. That's when he saw her. Her name was Amara. She had a smile that could light up the darkest room, and a soft, kind voice that made Nathan's heart feel warm for the first time in years. Amara didn't come from a rich family. She was running a small business, selling handmade crafts and clothes. She spoke about her dreams, her struggles, and her plans for the future. Nathan listened with wide eyes. She didn't talk about money. She didn't ask about his businesses. She just treated him like a normal person. And Nathan felt seen. He began to visit her shop often, buying small things and offering gentle advice. They started going on dates. They ate simple meals together. No fancy restaurants, just little roadside restaurants where people laughed loudly and ate with their hands. Nathan laughed too. He laughed more than he had in years. He thought, maybe, just maybe, this is the love I have been searching for. After a few months, Nathan trusted her completely. He shared his dreams with her. He told her about his loneliness, his fears, his childhood. He opened his heart wide, the heart he had kept locked up for so long. He loved her, deeply. He even began to think of marriage. One evening, as they sat under the stars, Amara looked at Nathan with hopeful eyes. "I have a dream," she said softly. "I want to grow my business. If I could just get a big investment, I could change my whole life." Nathan smiled. Without thinking twice, he promised her the money. 400 million naira. Enough to build not just a shop, but a whole company. He believed in her. He believed in them. He transferred the money into her account the next day, surprising her with a sweet handwritten note. "I believe in you, Amara. I believe in us. Let's build a future together." For 3 months, Nathan felt like he was walking on air. He imagined their wedding. He imagined building a family. He imagined waking up to someone who loved him. But on the 4th month, Amara disappeared. Her phone line stopped working. Her shop was empty and closed. She was gone, like a ghost. Nathan's heart shattered. He went from police station to police station trying to find her, but it was too late. Amara had fled to another country with his money and with his trust. Nathan sat in his giant house that night, alone again. He held the small handwritten note she once gave him, now crumpled in his shaking hands. He whispered through broken tears, "Why does everyone leave? Why does no one stay? Why does nobody love me?" The pain was worse than losing his parents, worse than losing Nanny Grace, worse than being lonely all those years. Because this time, he had believed, and that belief had been crushed. For weeks, Nathan stayed locked up inside his mansion. He didn't take any business calls. He didn't read any emails. He didn't step outside the golden gates. He just sat alone in his bedroom, looking at the ceiling, wondering, what is the point of all this? Money can't buy love. It can't fill my heart. He looked around at all the riches, the diamonds, the suits, the cars, and felt nothing but emptiness. One night, Nathan stood in front of his giant mirror. He stared at the man he saw, dressed in silk, wearing a gold watch. But he didn't recognize himself anymore. Tears welled up in his eyes. "I want real love," he whispered. "I want to know if people can love me, even if I have nothing." And at that moment, he made a decision. Nathan packed a small old backpack. He put a few clothes inside, plain, worn-out ones. He removed his watch and placed it in a drawer. He tucked a little money into his pocket, just enough to survive. Then, without telling anyone, Nathan walked out of the mansion. No guards, no drivers, no fancy cars. Just Nathan, and a heart that was tired of being broken.